This is Lakers News Fan Report, your daily home for updated news, context, and real rumors about our beloved team. And I'm coming in with something measured and serious. What actually changed inside the guard-wing rotation over the last 2 weeks. Why the analytics staff keeps flagging the same pain points in our defensive coverages. How the cap sheet and the two-timeline minutes model are pulling in opposite directions. And where that leaves one name that lit up last November and has been fighting gravity ever since. I'll stack timeline, film, and front office logic until the picture is honest. And only then, when the logic forces it, I'll land the headline you came for. Stay with me, because this isn't a hot take. It's the anatomy of a decision. I start with the court, because the court never lies. Our identity under this staff is clear. Advantage creation through pace to space, second side actions that punish late help, and a defense built on string integrity, not just individual stops. That blueprint asks two things of every perimeter player who isn't a heliocentric star. Connect possessions and survive mismatches without sending our bigs into foul hell. When the ball is hopping and the closeouts are short, it looks beautiful angles. Cuts, 0.5 decisions, the whole thing. But when we hit the mud, when a long wing sits on first moves, when a switch kills the initial action, when a pull-up doesn't drop the staff, leans on a different lever, trust. That trust gets earned by defenders who arrive on time at the nail, rotate on the third pass, and talk early enough that a scramble never becomes a fire. It's the boring stuff that wins in March and May. Now the rotation lens. We've seen an assertive shift toward defensive connectors, physical guards who screen for stars, screen for shooters, then get back in the stance and shrink the floor. It's not an anti-scoring stance. It's a playoff stance. Pair that with a ball-dominant backcourt where usage lives in the hands of two primary creators, and suddenly the question at the 2-3 is less who can get hot, and more who can be trusted on every trip. That's not romantic. It's ruthless. It's also the ecosystem into which a streak scorer has to fit if he wants to survive the long winter. Let's rewind one season for context. November was a neon sign. Movement threes finding the bottom, aggressive closeouts punished with straight-line drives, the kind of microwave nights that make a fan base dream. 13.6 points per game and 46% from deep felt like the start of a folklore chapter, not a blip. But the league scouts too. They top-locked the pin downs, iced the empty corner pick and rolls, switched the wide pin so the handback became a dead end. And they asked a harder question. Can you guard your yard? Stun off the nail without overhelping? And recover to a shooter without giving up the back cut? That is where expectations met requirements. The shots didn't stop being pretty. The possessions around them stopped being stable. Add in injuries at the worst moment. Yours, ours, teammates who change your lineup neighbors, and the arc bends. Suddenly the staff needs more defensive talk, more box-out accountability, more 0 for 0 with 2 screen assists and 3 perfect stunts nights that don't trend on social. That's where connector guards crowd the rotation. It's also where a streak-leading scorer has to either reinvent the off-ball menu screen, slip, rescreen, cut, relocate, crash, or accept that minutes are earned on the other end. The cap sheet is a character in this story. When you operate near the apron lines, you can't fix redundancy with an easy mid-sized trade stack. You need precision, not noise. Roster slots become chess pieces with deadline, not vibes. If a player's best skill overlaps with the strengths of established high-usage guards, and if his defensive floor lags behind the program's standard, front office math starts to whisper. Value him honestly. Find him a lane where his shots aren't redundant. And if that lane isn't here, preserve optionality while his market perception still includes the pop from last season. It's not cruelty. It's stewardship of a window. On film, the story keeps repeating. When the offense runs 77, that guard screening tree, and the defense switches to chill the first advantage. The possession needs a third action that hits with timing, a ghost screen into a flare for our primary, or a shallow cut that empties the side so the drive lane is clean. If you're the weak side wing in that moment, your job isn't to spectate. It's to turn into the hinge that flips the defense screen your own man to free the corner, then present as a 45 cut if the low man overhelps. The staff grades that. If your possession reads are late, if your footwork takes you into the strong side crowd, or if your transition defense loses a runner while you lobby for a call, it shows up in the review. That's not a moral judgment, it's a professional one. I want to be fair to the player here because the scoring pop is real. Off stagger, he angles his body like a pro and catches on balance. As a trailer, he finds rhythm threes that stop opponent runs. You can save a second unit when the paint is crowded and everyone is tight. None of that disappears just because role clarity gets harder. The question the Lakers have to answer is narrower. Can they afford a bench guard whose best minutes live in the same ecosystem as two starters who already eat those touches? At the cost of lineups that need stops and screens more than sparks? There's a second development only the close listeners caught. A near trade last season that fell apart late. Deals rescinded teach front offices two things at once: what the market thinks of your asset and how you value him beyond the headline. When a trade almost happened and then doesn't, you have to decide whether to rebuild trust and reshape role, or to keep the phone warm and revisit frameworks that better match timelines. The answer is rarely emotional. It's almost always calendar-driven. Okay, breathe? Because this is where logic becomes conclusion. Inside the building, the staff has converged on a rotation that prioritizes defense-first guards alongside our stars and uses the bench for change-ups that don't break coverage. The front office has aligned minutes and money with a 2-year window that demands coherence more than bursts. In that picture, Dalton Knecht's profile streak scoring, movement shooting, and a still-developing defensive portfolio sits on a fault line. Which brings me to the sentence you were waiting for. The expectation right now is that Dalton Knecht is headed out of the Lakers. Plans, with exploratory conversations already sketching paths that give him a clearer role elsewhere and give Los Angeles the connective tissue this staff keeps demanding. Before you turn the page, let's map the why into basketball, not just paperwork. With our primary creators on the floor, the best third pieces are screeners who can flip the angle twice in one action, short rollers who can hit the corner on a rope, and wings who can sit on the nail, tag the roller, and still contest the kick-out three without fouling. That's the math of playoff possessions. If your third is a shot creator, he has to bring either elite pull-up gravity or top 10 percentile rim pressure. Otherwise, the offensive value compresses while the defensive liability expands. Knecht isn't a zero there. He's improving. But the bar for third on a contender is skyscraper high, and the runway to hit it inside this roster has shortened. The staff's usage tells its own truth. We've seen nights where a younger guard with a lower usage rate closes over him because the defensive floor is firmer. We've seen late game ATOs designed to find a switch mismatch for our star and a spacer in the weak side corner who the staff trusts to be ready on. The point 5. We've seen bench units tightened around a defensive heartbeat to protect non-star minutes. None of that is anti-Knecht. It's pro-window. Roles get narrower as stakes get higher. The harshness is part of the job. There's also the human piece, and I want to honor it. A player doesn't choose the roster context he lands in, and a November eruption can be both real and unsustainable at the same time. He's worked. He's taken the coaching. He's tried to fold connector habits into his game. In a different city, with a green light runway and a guard who thrives off gravity he didn't create, he could be a nightly 18 who wins games in February. That's precisely why his value hasn't vanished, and precisely why the Lakers are listening, because fit is currency, not just points per game. Where could this go? Teams with offensive star benches will call, because 20 clean points spread across 8 possessions can stabilize any second quarter. Teams with jumbo creators who want movement shooters to pry open the middle third will call, because a hard-cutting spacer who sprints into handoff makes the nail defender choose between protecting the rim and conceding a corner three. Even rebuilders who need a 24-minute score to keep the locker room sane across an 82-game slog will call, because microwave offense turns long losing streaks into manageable bumps. Add a fourth lane. Mid-tier playoff hopefuls hunting volatility off the pine clubs that can't manufacture runs against switch defenses and need a sprint shooter to flip a game in 5 trips. The return Los Angeles wants is already telegraphed by the staff's language and substitution. Patterns, defensive size at the point of attack, an extra body who can survive switches without sending the back line into rotation hell, or a pick that restores flexibility without adding salary load. Sweeteners matter optionality on years 3 and 4. Protections that roll cleanly, Non-guarantees that can be flipped in July. The perfect craft move is the one that converts duplicated skills into complementary one and turns a logjam into a ladder for the playoff rotation. Let's talk ripple effects on the Lakers once the move happens, because fit changes feel different by player. Austin Reeves becomes more of a true secondary, again more early offense touches. More late clock orchestration where his pacing is elite. Fewer dead possessions where he's spacing for another spacer. The Marcus Smart minutes lock in as the defensive captaincy that glues lineups' point of attack heat. Tag calls on time, and a steady diet of screen-rescreen actions to free our primaries without burning timeouts. Gabe Vincent, when back to full rhythm, resumes the off-ball chase and space roll that makes the splits hum. Ghost screens to trigger miscommunication. Shallow cuts that punch the gap, and enough catch-and-shoot volume to punish stun-happy defenses. Wings who have felt like passengers start driving possessions again, because the shot profile shifts toward corners and cuts, not bailout pull-ups. Jackson Hayes and the big rotation benefit from fewer compromise possessions, where the first line gets cracked and the last line inherits an impossible ask. Fewer emergency tags mean cleaner box outs and fewer N1s. Even the two-way slots get sharper. When the bench identity is defense first, the 10th, 11th men know their verb screen. Rotate, crash rather than chasing heat checks. Tactically, you'll notice subtle changes the game after, and they stack. On offense, more Chicago, pinned down into handoff, not to free a pull-up, but to force the switch that our creators can read in the pocket passes. More pistol into Spain, where the back screener is a real spacer, which punishes peel switches and dares bigs to choose between the lob and the skip. Expect empty side P&R to isolate the nail help and generate layup quality shots without dribbling into traffic clearer side. Hit the pocket, force low man rotation from shooters instead of athletes. ATOs lean heavier into ghost actions that create two defenders on air, then slip to the rim for uncontested twos. On defense, earlier top locks to deny handbacks, cleaner tags from the low man, and fewer scrambles because the first help arrives square, on balance with both hands high. Expect peel switch rules tighten if a driver wins the edge. We peel early and trust the weak side X out instead of praying the backline erases a layup. Those are possessions that never make highlights and do make playoff wins. At a late game wrinkle, show and recover for 2 beats against pull-up killers. Then scram the mismatch on the flight of the pass-clean rotations you only call confidently, when the wing personnel can execute without fouling. I know what some of you are thinking. Is there a world where Knecht stays, pivots into a pure movement shooter role, and reclaims a niche? There's always a world if he turns the screening craft up to 10, embraces dirty work cutting, and strings together a month of plus defense on second units. That version looks like this. He becomes the middle third stressor who pins for our primary, flips the angle late, then sprints into a relocation 3 while the defense is still sorting cross matches. He learns to be the hammer screener on a TO set the weak side pin for the corner. Open the skip, then 45 cut when the low man overhelps. On defense, he buys minutes by nailing the boring details. Top foot outside on chases, early nail stunts without over-digging, two-hand contests without crashing into the shooter. The staff isn't in the business of burying workable players. If the habits stabilize, the minutes reappear. But the version most likely in front of us, the one the numbers, the film, and the calendar point to ends with the Lakers choosing clarity over sentiment and Knecht getting the fresh context that can love his. He checks without punishing his learning curve. So I want your read before I close, and I want specifics. If the Lakers convert Knecht into a defensive connector and a future chip, are you good with the sacrifice and bench shot making for the upgrade in nightly floor? If a pick comes back instead of a rotation piece, do you value flexibility over immediate depth? And what protections are you comfortable with lottery protected this year that rolls to top 10 next year? Or a 1-7 protection with a swap? Option that keeps our board game alive? Which matchups did Knecht's best nights actually solve for? Second unit droughts versus switching teams. Bench-heavy lineups on back-to-backs, and which ones did they leave untouched? Big, switchable wings, jumbo creators who hunt mismatches. Talk to me in the comments mid-maps, closing group, timeout usage, challenge strategy, because this channel breathes when Lakers fans bring grown-up hoops to the table. Give me your closing 5 in a Game 6 on the road. your foul management plan for the third quarter, and your threshold for adding salary if the outgoing deal returns a true POA stopper. My concise landing stays firm but fuller. The momentum inside the building is moving away from Dalton Knecht, not because he can't play, and not because those November memories were fake, but because the Lakers' current identity, cap posture, and playoff demands point toward defense-first connectors and low mistake possessions. The expectation is that Knecht is headed out, ideally into a role that honors his shot-making while Los Angeles shores up the connective tissue around its stars. The sober, professional version of this decision replaces redundancy with reliability, trades flash for floor, and buys options in July without burning wins in March. If the return is a switchable guard and a second, you probably bank the certainty. If the market offers a cleaner first in July, you weigh patience against the standings. Either way, the North Star is the same. Reduce the nightly variance. Protect the window and build a playoff shot diet that travels. Drop your blueprint below. Would you move him now if the return is a POA defender with size and a second, or hold for a cleaner first-round asset in July, even if it means living with variance for 2 more months? Which closing five are you riding in a Game 6 Reeves Smart Prince LeBron AD by default? Or do you swap length and shooting based on coverage? And how much bench scoring are you willing to trade for 5 fewer? Blow-by drives per night? I'll be in the comments all evening. If this breakdown hit the vein, subscribe, turn on alerts, and send this to the friend who lives in the trade machine. Lakers News Fan Report will keep you 3 steps ahead with fast updates when news breaks and deep dives when context is king.